Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy.
And you're Nancy.
And you're Shannon.
How about that? How's that for things? You know, we just before you came in, Nancy, we were reading 2 different comments from parents who wrote in about the beginning of school.
Yeah.
And one of them, it's really devastating, where the kindergartner, first time going to school, and she's been bullied so badly that the mom already had to pull her out.
Oh.
That somebody punched her in the head, somebody blocked her from the bathroom, and that she was completely, this is a sweet little girl
Right.
who's an angel.
Right.
And it's so bad that the mom had to pull her out. And then another one where the kid is acting up in the afternoon, not in the morning, and being sent off to the principal's office. And you and I were just talking about this beginning of school, and it's hard. It's really, really hard. And your problems might be small and your problems might be large, but it's always, there's like, you got to get over some hurdles,
Right.
you got to get over some humps, and it's all emotional. It's, you know, even there's been little kerfuffles for us, and it's hard.
Yeah, we've had some too so far.
And it makes me relive every single school year of what went wrong and what happened. And I was just saying, I feel like I dropped a ball because I didn't overdo it this year.
Right.
And you were saying, well, it's not your fault. And I said, but isn't that the thing? It always comes down to that. We go,
Yeah, we
well,
always feel
what
like we
should
didn't do
I
enough.
have done
Right.
to make sure that this, and you know, at this point, I've run out of potential scenarios that could possibly happen. You know what I mean? It's like there is no way that we could do everything.
No.
We do our level best.
I have that helpless feeling when I drop him off in the morning and I watch him walk away. And I remember you saying that once, that we don't know what's going to go on for those next, 8 hours.
We really don't. And, you know, especially at the beginning of the school year, where their communication system isn't fully up and running, which I used to work in schools. I know how that is. It just is so uncomfortable for an autism parent because you feel like you're flying blind.
Yes, you do.
And you're trusting in a world in which sometimes trust isn't the thing. But so let's just all acknowledge that we're all on that page.
It's okay if you're having problems with school.
And what I keep saying to Jem and to myself, 2 things. I keep saying, work the problem and just keep swimming. The Dory thing. Work the problem and just keep swimming. It's important to know that the vast majority of people at your child's school usually want your child to do well and be well. There are exceptions, and for our mom who the principal didn't do anything about the bullying, I've got a lawyer for you tomorrow on the show that we're going to talk about that, because sometimes you have people who are incompetent and negligent and don't get it. But the vast majority of people working at schools
Want the best for your child.
They do. They want your child to be safe, and they want your child to learn. That's why they got into it. They wouldn't have taken this low-paying job unless that was something that really jazzed them. So we work the problem. Nobody is perfect. Everything can't be perfect. We work the problem, and we stay diligent.
Yes.
Right? Okay. In the
news, we've got some stories.
We're going to start out with a particularly heinous story.
About the mom who received the letter about her son.
Yes. Jessica Green of Berkeley, Gloucestershire.
In England.
Was told to take action about her son making noises. Otherwise, the neighbors were threatening to report her family to social services.
Right. And they're making a complaint to the board. I guess it's sort of a neighborhood condo.
Right. Like an HOA sort of situation.
Right.
And there's a little outdoor garden, and her child, there he is. Look at this little angel.
He's nonverbal.
3 years old.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. And he's nonverbal.
And so he makes sounds to communicate.
Did Wyatt do that? He makes. Jem did the same thing. He would make these high. I always said he'd do R2D2 noises. These high pitched. I can't even do it because I can't get into my upper sinuses. But it can make you crazy after a while. I can attest to that. But it is what it is, and it's not something you can just say to a 3-year-old. Hey, dial that down, would you? Not even a typical 3-year-old. You can't. No. Thank you very much.
So she released a letter on Facebook.
They wrote her an anonymous letter.
Yeah, they did. and said that they were going to take it to the tenant services at the council there, make a noise complaint, and also take it up with social services.
And the letter was really nasty.
Yeah,
Like
he was referred to as an it.
it.
Yeah.
And it started out, basically, if you can't control your child, then it shouldn't be out in the garden doing whatever. It was really, and then it also said because he's out there so much making these noises, we all doubt whether he's really being taken care of and perhaps he's being neglected, which is that veiled threat of, we'll have him taken away from you if you don't take care of this.
So she said that she took the letters, it was intended as a form of bullying and a threatening nature. She said that the district council there is offering support to the family, and she's filed a complaint with the Gloucestershire police.
Yeah, and she said that this shows a selfish, narrow-minded, and uneducated view, and every person has a right to have a voice and to be heard, and for Henry, this is his only way.
Right.
Horrifying. We stand in support with this mother, and I think it comes down to that people are ignorant.
Yeah.
Whenever people say, really, well, autism awareness, don't we think we're all aware? No, I don't think we are, and I don't think people get it that they look and they see autism, they go, oh, well, that's autism there, and then they see a new circumstance where somebody's behaving in a way that doesn't make them happy, and there's no moment of, well, maybe they have autism,
right,
or maybe they have something, maybe they don't even think, okay, maybe there's something going on, and that's the awareness that I think we still desperately need. It's like teaching people how to be human beings,
yes,
but apparently we have to do that, but we stand in support of that mom. Okay. Then we get into some science.
Yes.
So a new study that is looking at cerebrospinal fluid in young children in order to look and see if there is a link with ASD.
And they found perhaps an excess of this fluid.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. So we want to encourage people to take a look at that. There is this fluid is supposed to protect the brain, but it may interact in a way that could indicate that there's something else going on.
It also filters out the byproducts of brain metabolism, it says.
Which, what that ends up translating to, I'm sure I don't know.
Right.
Because my degree in science is non-existent.
Well, it says that it filters out toxins that can be harmful inflammatory proteins. And that
Which brings
this
us all
fluid
back
filters out these toxins on a regular basis.
But what it does do is it brings us back around to the questions. There are more and more people who are saying, is autism something that is autoimmune? Is there something that happens that triggers? Is there exposure to things that triggers an autoimmune response that then has a cascade effect in the brain? And there's more and more. And this is just one more thing, looking and saying, look, there are some differences in the cerebrospinal fluid. You can find out more about this by going to dealwithautism.com. And then I thought this was a cute story of so often, and you've got a son who's an artist, right? And so often we're talking about how do we get our kids involved, and this young man, Michael Nowicki, he's 21 years old, and he is on the autism spectrum, and he's an artist. And he decided that he would go to the local public library, and he went to the children's section and said, can I paint a mural for you?
Right.
Can I paint a mural for you? Now, what I love about this is that this then became his job for a while. And you can see a picture of him there. And he painted this, he didn't know, he's a painter, he's an artist, but I don't think he'd ever painted a mural before.
No.
So there was a lot that he had to learn about it. And what an exciting, I thought it was an inspirational story for all of us, that sometimes we're like, how's my kid ever going to get a job? Right? But this kid is getting international press for the fact that he said, I'm going to volunteer.
He went into the library to volunteer, and they said, we need a mural. He said,
amazing.
I happen to be able to be an artist.
So I absolutely love it. I'd love to see more people doing things like that. We've talked for a while about doing an installation here at CARD with Wyatt's work.
Right.
And I think, Nancy, I feel bad because I have not supported you enough in doing that. We need to make that happen.
We'll make that happen this year.
Okay. All right. Promise?
I promise.
Okay. We have other things we have to work on too. have to get done.
Right. Lots of things.
Lots and lots and lots of things to do.
Here's an article, Is It Time to Ditch the Autism Puzzle Piece? A new study suggests that it has a negative connotation.
Yeah, isn't this interesting? I thought that the puzzle piece came into being with Autism Speaks, but they're saying that as early as the 1960s that a puzzle piece was used to represent autism. I don't know whether that was ASA that started it, but
It's used by ASA,
yeah,
Autism
and,
Society of
and,
America.
and with so
Lots
many
of
people.
groups, yeah.
Like we don't have a puzzle piece on Autism Live's
Right.
branding, and do you have one on ACT
No,
today?
we do not.
But a lot of organizations do, and it's sort of the international symbol. We wear a ribbon that's puzzle piece ribbon. Other organizations have a color, but we use the puzzle piece. But interesting to see that when they went to the general public and asked them, what do you associate this with, that it had negative connotations.
Yes, that it was associated with imperfection, incompletion, uncertainty, difficulty, the state of being unresolved, and most poignantly, being missing.
Yes, yes.
So,
Which are not necessarily the things that we want
No.
autism associated with anymore.
Right.
So a growing movement of people saying perhaps it's time to let this go.
yes.
For Autism Live, you may notice that in a lot of our branding, we have a tree. And that was very important to me and for us because a couple of different things. The tree symbol for me always has been a thing about, you plant seeds
Right,
and
and it
big
grows.
things happen.
Right.
And that you got to put deep roots down
Right.
to maintain a tree. And you can't just saw off one side because it tilts over. So trees are always a huge symbol for me, but there is also there are a lot of things that CARD usually has included a tree in almost everything that they are a part of because the original Lovaas study, when it was published with a tree on it, the young autism study. So it all goes back to that.
Okay.
So that's why we have our symbol for a tree.
Positive symbol for growth.
Yeah, so that's how we look at things. And you guys have like a thing that's the horizon and like a
Yes.
sun.
Yeah.
Like a new day.
Right.
That's what I always get from
Right.
that.
Yes.
So, in any case, more hopeful perhaps. Okay, and then
Another scientific study here about the origins of autism.
yes, looking specifically, and this just came out yesterday. That they continue to look at the brain, but biological psychiatry is looking at the pathology of autism and the point at which it begins to take shape in the human brain. And this is something that everybody always wants to talk about. So when is the moment? And they're saying that there's some reason to believe that 6 months is when they can look at an MRI and see that there is a difference in the way that the brain grows, which is interesting to me because I think more and more studies have looked at, a lot of us think that thought for the longest time that a child you couldn't see until 3.
Right.
Then it was 2.5, 2.
Right.
Then they were saying at 18 months that there were some markers, some micro movements that they could see even at 12 months.
Right.
And now to say that there are changes in the brain, I don't really know how many. They looked at 260 infants between the ages of 6 and 12 months. I have to say, I'm concerned for parents that are having to have an MRI at 6 months for a child because that's not necessarily the best thing for a child.
Right.
We've seen some concerns about excessive MRIs. But amazing that for whatever reason they participated in this and that we have some input showing that perhaps that there's a difference at 6 months.
Right. Inefficiencies appearing in the auditory cortex.
That it really causes me to go back and think about what was going on at 6 months.
Yeah, me too.
Because Jem was talking. He was verbal
So
at
was
6
Wyatt.
months and
And a year.
and chattering and but at 6 months, he was singing.
Right.
And to think that something was going on that early,
right.
that was causing him to, in a little over a year later, lose language.
Yeah.
It's a different way of looking
It
at
is.
things.
It is.
Fascinating. In any case, you can find out more about that at
ScienceDaily.
sciencedaily.com. All right, we've got a great guest today.
Yes, we do.
I'm very excited about this guest. She's a wonderful writer, Judith
Judith
Newman.
Newman. She's got the new book To Siri with Love coming out.
Yes.
based on a column that she wrote that got a
We
lot of
actually
feedback.
covered that when it was in the New York Times.
Yeah.
We covered the story that she had done, and so many people said this is so interesting. It got so much feedback that this is not her first book. We should say that she's an accomplished writer.
Right.
2 sons, twins, a very non-conventional life that she leads. So it's going to be fascinating to talk to her and to talk about her kids and this relationship that her son has
With Siri.
with her cell phone and Siri on her cell phone. So we're looking forward to that. We're going to take a break, and then hopefully we're going to be back with Judith and Heumann. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Yvonne Johansson, and this is My Little House.
My Little House is an interactive, multi-sensory educational felt toy that I invented to help develop children's language skills.
I love My Little House.
I've been working as a speech therapist for over 20 years. I have spent my entire career working with young children. I work with children with language delays, and I have many children with significant cognitive disabilities and children on the autism spectrum. It has been a constant challenge finding toys that are fun, educational, and actually engage my students. In every preschool since I've been a young therapist, we carry on these felt boards. Kids love them because they're soft and they're fluffy, and there's usually these little pieces that attach to these boards because felt sticks onto felt. You bring them into the activity because they're putting a piece on the board. So it's almost kind of like magic. So then I just thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just take this one-dimensional board and make it into an actual 3-dimensional toy? How cool would that be?
That's the idea behind My Little House. You can spread it out flat like a 4-panel felt board, or here's the cool part. In the blink of an eye, My Little House easily converts into a 3-dimensional reversible house.
This is the outside. This is the inside.
My Little House comes with 36 felt cutout pieces that match outlines in 8 colorful rooms. And they're felt, so they stick. Each piece inside My Little House has been placed with purpose.
For instance, in the kitchen, whole, half, under, on top, inside, big, bigger, and biggest, empty and full, circle, triangle, inside, outside.
Really cool thing, I have a nonprofit, Lecotech. They are the folks that put out the Differently Abled Guide for Toys R Us. They've been doing it for 25 years. They gave me their seal of approval as a toy that they feel is a toy with purpose, and that will make a difference. But My Little House isn't just for kids on the spectrum or with significant disorders. It's also for typically developing 2 to 5-year-olds. It's a fun toy.
Oh, this is so soft. That piece goes.
Recently, I took My Little House to the American Speech and Hearing Association convention in Philadelphia, and the response from my peers was overwhelming. Hundreds of therapists, teachers, and heads of school districts wanted to order them.
It was real validation for me that this truly is a toy that needs to get out there.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod. I'm a proud autism mom, I'm a former educator, and I am the host of Autism Live. And as all 3 of those things, I want to recommend to you My Little House. This is one of the smartest toys I have ever seen for teaching language to kids who have emerging language. Whether they're on the autism spectrum or completely neurotypical, it's a great, fun, reinforcing toy, but it's especially great for our kids that are on the autism spectrum because it makes learning fun and it makes it tactile. They have these felt shapes and they get to match them up. And I'm telling you, even the adults love to play with this. We loved this toy so much that we wanted to be able to bring it to you at a great discount. So right now, if you will go to www.smartfelttoys, and when you get to the coupon code, put in a-live.com, you'll get $5 off. Isn't that great? So I want to encourage you, go and get My Little House for all the kiddos in your life.
Being part of this community is really important to a mom with a son like Jackson, because it really does take a village, and you need so much support, you know, to help bring out all of the amazing qualities and skills and talents that our children have. So I'm just very grateful to everybody who was a part of this.
I think it helps with all sorts of that self-esteem, social skills. They seem to communicate a little bit with each other, and they had a lot of friends. The helpers were phenomenal, and I think the social skills for sure, because they worked together and they did a couple of group things across the floor, and they sang songs together, and I yeah, for sure, I think it's a really huge deal. A great program.
What programs like this show is the person is in front of what we call today a disorder. I think what we're finding is that these sorts of brain challenges that make people unique can actually be gifts in ways we haven't discovered in the rest of society to bring them out. So when you see a program like this and you see the kids dancing, having fun, and making up jokes, making up the story. I was here when they did that. That was so amazing to watch, because they were all focused, they were all present, they were all laughing, they were all getting into the creation of this story. And that to me sort of broke the barrier to say, no, first we're dealing with people, and then we're dealing with the challenges.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy here on Autism Live, and we've got a great guest who's going to be joining us via Skype right now, Judith Heumann, and she is the author of the book that everybody's talking about right now, To Siri with Love. Judith, we want to welcome you here. Judith this is not her first book, and we need to say that. She's a wonderful, wonderful writer, and this book is getting a great deal of attention because I think it's getting attention because it's so well written, and it's so accessible for people who, whether you've got a kid that's on the spectrum or you don't, you've got a wonderful sense of humor. You've written for many things. In fact, this originally started with an article that was in the New York Times that we covered when it was out originally as one of our in the news things.
To Siri with Love was an original story in the New York Times, right?
So
oh, yeah, it was. Oh, I didn't even know. So there you go.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Tell us how all this developed from it becoming an article to a book.
Yeah, well, I mean, essentially, I wrote about this. It had developed the way a lot of stories that I write develop, strangely. I just wrote something guilt-ridden on Facebook. I just said something about, my God, I'm a horrible mother. This is what I did. And my editor at the Times, who lurks to see these things, said, you should write about that. So that's what happened. But essentially, it was nothing more than sitting around noodling with Siri myself. I was looking at it, and it had so many, there was some BuzzFeed column about what you can do with Siri. And so one of the things it said was you could tell what you ask Siri what planes are flying overhead, and it will tell you, and it does. And I thought to myself, it gives you the name of the flight and the altitude and everything. And I just sort of was talking to myself, and I murmured out loud, why in God's name would anyone need to know this? And I hadn't even realized Gus was listening to me. And he said, well, so you know who you're waving at, Mommy. And then I sort of was like, oh, okay, and then I gave him Siri because he was sort of curious, and that started it. He just found great, he was completely riveted by this little device that was going to answer all of his odd little questions.
Yeah, one of the things I love is that you described that, she's the ultimate companion in terms of patience when you want research and to talk about little known facts. And I don't think any of us really had thought about that before, but it resonates with everyone.
It does resonate with everyone. I mean, there's a reason that when you are sitting around and you go, so Siri, what are you up to? Siri has 5 different answers for what she's doing this evening. It's not just people on the spectrum who are talking to Siri. I think all of us, in a moment of boredom, when we discover that Siri will talk back to us, we in fact can't help ourselves, and we sit there and we start talking. I certainly know I start talking to her every now and then. I was just doing it the other day. So, but I think Siri holds a special place for kids, and for kids who are communications impaired. I don't know if you've ever had your own kids play with Siri a little bit.
Yes, my son likes to change the voice on it and the language.
Okay.
But yes, we play with it, and it has Wyatt ever played?
He has not played with it.
It might be a fun thing to see what Wyatt does with it, and to see how Siri responds to
Right.
it. And I think I love, there's so many things that you describe in this book that I love, Judith. I love that you talk, I think it might even be in the introduction, you talk about the emails that you got from people after the New York Times report. Tell them about what somebody from Russia said.
Oh, it was wonderful. A woman in kind of halting English, or not halting, but clearly English wasn't her first language. She told me she was, excuse me, a translator for Siri. That was her job. And she told me that now when she is translating, she would think of Gus, because she would think, excuse me, of his emotional reactions to what she was playing around with, to how she was making the language work.
Yeah, I love it. She said, I see that I need to make my Siri in Russian a kinder, gentler, more patient, excuse me, we're all going to have the throat tickle now. We're even through Skype, we're passing it around. And I have had the experience before driving my car and asking, having Hey Siri, and asking Siri for something, and not being able to get the answer I wanted because I wasn't asking in the right terms. And then finally, in frustration, saying, Siri, I am so frustrated with you right now. And I like just yelling at her. And then this moment of quiet and her saying, I'm really sorry to hear that, Shannon. I'm doing the best I can. Which calmed me down.
Sometimes she'll actually say, you don't need to yell.
Yes.
I've had that come out of her mouth too. She'll say, she does, she militates politeness in a way. Now, to us, that's just funny. But if you're communications impaired and you're not quite sure what's polite and what's not, it's also very useful. And it was certainly very, very useful for Gus.
What do you think made him resonate so much with it?
Excuse me. Well, what made it resonate for him? It was a few things. Number one, who is more patient than a machine? At the point, I'm sure that we as mothers have all had this feeling sometimes when our kid, neurotypical or not, but particularly on the spectrum, our kid is just obsessing about something, on and on and on and on. And there's only so many times you want to answer that question.
Yes.
And you finally just kind of go here, and I was doing that. I was using Siri, and perhaps not the best way in the world, but I was using Siri so that I didn't have to keep answering the same question. Well, what could be better? A machine that will answer a question in several different ways, maybe many different ways, and will never tire of answering it, and will not get exasperated with you for asking that question, unless you shout at her. I mean, she'll get a little bit, she'll correct you. But if you're just asking the question, it's fine. So I think that there was that element. And as I also have said, I don't know how easily back and forth conversation comes to your kids, but for Gus, it didn't come that easily. It not only didn't come easily, it really didn't come at all for a long time. He had a tendency to just say, usually in very simple sentences, to sort of blurt whatever it was he was thinking of, sometimes to me, but sometimes, to the closet or to my feet or wherever. And he would say what he wanted to and walk away. There was no such thing as reciprocity for a very long time.
Right.
So that's what Siri also does. It's reciprocity. You sit there and you ask a question and she'll answer, but sometimes she asks a question back, or sometimes her answer will lead to more questions as well.
Yeah, I love that it can, and then she's willing to do research on that, and she'll ask, did you mean this? Which opens a whole other can of worms.
Now you have twins, so you have one child who is typical.
One child who's typical and would always be whispering in Gus's ear to say, nasty things to Siri just to see the reaction. Not nasty exactly, let's just say racy things.
Right.
So, I know more about Kate Upton's bra size than I care to. That's where he went with that. But even he began to see the fun of it too. And I think that there are moments in our lives, and I don't think I'm wrong about this. Actually, friends told me about this, where if you're having a little moment of doubt or a little moment of insecurity, you might ask Siri a question. If I ask her right now, Siri, how do I look? And she'll say, on a scale of 1 to 10, I bet you're a 42. Now, I feel better. Right. And actually, I happen to have Siri on the a guy's British voice right now.
I hear that.
That's even better as far as I'm concerned.
My son would like that. I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm not seeing people talk about that I want to talk about with you is that one of the things that I enjoyed was we really get to see your life. We get to be involved in your life. And your life is interesting, Judith. I don't know if you realize this, but
are you using interesting as a euphemism?
No. I mean, your life in some ways, I looked at it and you're somebody I would want to be friends with, right? And someone that I can easily picture myself being friends with, because there are things that the way you reference them, I go, oh, she gets it the same way that I get it. But the circumstances of your life are kind of, I think anybody would call them unconventional. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah, of course. It's fair to say. As I say in the book, I've been asked so many, my husband and I don't live together. He's much older than I am. And I've been asked to do books on this. And I cannot imagine a more boring book than a book about why two people don't live together. There are reasons, but it's just not. And I can't remember who I did it for now. The Guardian. I think I did a piece for it in conjunction with this because they asked me. But I guess it is unconventional. Gee, if you want to be, I hope you'll friend me on Facebook then when this is over.
I certainly will.
I'm going to immediately go.
I will.
But sure, it's unconventional in that way, and some of that unconventionalness, if that's the word. Was, I don't know, it was worrisome in the sense that I'm sort of like the poster child for a mother of an autistic child. So, the much older father, the having children, having twins, having children later in life, having a rough pregnancy where there's a lot of, supposedly the science says, with a lot of tension, there's a lot of release of cortisol, and that could have reasons. So, in the book, I speculate a little bit about this, all of the many reasons that I might have, but at the end of the day, who cares? You have your days of thinking about it, and then you're presented with this wonderful, strange little person, and life goes on.
Tell us about Gus now, and what are your hopes for his future? And let's talk a little bit about the future for our kids with autism.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this is what keeps us up at night, right? We sit there and we think to ourselves, what's going to happen when we're not here?
Yeah.
How independent can this person be? And at 3:00 in the morning, my mind goes to the most dire circumstances. My mind goes to my son will not have friends, my son will be homeless, who will he have to talk to, who will he have to cut his food even, because at almost 16 he still can't use a knife. So every awful thing is there. And then I wake up in the morning and I see a person who is, I don't want to say incrementally changing, because autism is strange. It's not incremental. At least in my experience, it's like your kid is, doing this, and all of a sudden there's this jump in abilities and development. And I don't know if that's been your experience, but
yes.
that's sort of been mine. So I say that when I wrote this, he was 14, and I say he, like most kids on the spectrum, he's the adorable question mark. You really don't know at 14, whereas you can have a fairly good idea of other neurotypical child's independence at the age of 14, that they will be. And so my hopes for him and my dreams for him just are all about having a place at the table. That's what I think about every day. That place doesn't have to be anything exalted. It has to just be, because I know he's such a social person, and I know that his ability to connect with people is there, but not like other people's. It is problematic for him. I just want him to have a place in the community in whatever way that is. So when people say to me, well, why did you write this book? And of course, I have completely selfish reasons for writing this book. And they are that my son will be remembered just a teeny bit in a few years, and he will have a job, because as I write about, he is, without being at all academic, he is more motivated to have a job than just about anyone you know. And there's the problem with him, and maybe you've seen this with your kids, is there's always some part of a job that he can't do. There's like one thing that in a series of things, like I write in the book about how he actually kind of feels he's a doorman. I mean, he doesn't, but he does all of the doorman duties in my building, except that one thing about not keeping people out. He could never do that.
Right,
So he couldn't be a doorman, really, but I'm just saying that there are ways, maybe not that, but there are ways, I think, for us as a culture to find places at the table for autistic people, because we have so many now around us. Isn't it going to be better if we help them find their niche, if we make small adjustments? Because often the adjustments you have to make are not huge. Like, I'm sure, did you see that wonderful video about the dancing barista
that Ellen featured,
went kind of viral?
Yes.
And Ellen, I mean, what had to happen for this kid to get a job, that his dream job at a coffee place? It took one manager to just say to himself, this kid makes really good coffee, so what if he has to dance while he does it?
Right.
And I just thought that was wonderful and beautiful, and that's what I hope happens with my son, more than anything else, that he finds that person who will let him do, maybe my son has to hop when he talks to you, but he's still giving you great directions, or maybe whatever it is. He will show up every day, and he will be the happiest, most joyful employee that you've got.
Well, and you mentioned something to us in the pre-production about a story that is of interest to you right now. Darius McCullum, who is the subject of the documentary Off the Rails. We had Adam Irving, the director of the film. It's a documentary. I think it's on Netflix or Amazon right now, one of the two. It's amazing documentary about this man who his entire life was obsessed with the MTA and did everything he could to try to work for the MTA. And when they didn't hire him and wouldn't hire him, he took it upon himself as a very young man. He just hired himself and was often left in charge of running trains, and then would be caught and arrested and do jail time.
Right.
And that time and time again, he had lawyers advocating for him, trying to find a way that he could have the job that he was doing.
If he only could do a job doing this, as opposed to be getting in trouble with the law.
But instead, they keep arresting him and putting him in jail. When he's been, every time he and believe me, we all understand he confiscated the trains and he would, you know, without a license was driving them, but he was always driving them safely.
Right.
If somebody just gave him a little training.
And the buses and you know, people will say, they have the same answer. Well, how could you have someone like this? You know, he didn't have insurance. Who knows what he might do? And I said, I know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to steal another train or bus and he's going to drive it safely. That's what he's going to do.
Exactly.
So, you know, but this is a man, I mean, this kills me. This is a man who has spent more than half of his life in jail over this nonsense. And when I called the MTA in the book, I call a spokesman and I asked him about this, and he said, he talked to me like I was out of my mind, like I was asking the MTA to hire a felon. And I'm like, well, he is a felon. He's a felon because he keeps getting arrested for doing the same thing, because you've arrested him. And is there not some place that this guy could be?
Yeah.
And apparently, you know, it's a rule. You can't have a felon working for the MTA. But surely, here's what I think. If I won the lottery tomorrow, what I would do is I would blow, you know, like $60,000, $50,000, whatever it costs to have someone shadow Darius McCollin around for a year, to show that he was a safe person to do this job. Right. That's what I would do. And I wish, you know, if anybody listens to the, and look, I don't know Darius McCollin. There may be something else that I'm unfamiliar with and I'm wrong, but everything I see and read, and I've talked to his lawyer, there doesn't seem to be anything making this an unrealistic goal. So if there's somebody out there with big money and they want to kind of save one person's life, that's what I suggest that they do.
I love it.
And you're really focused on this idea of work and our kids on the spectrum.
I am because, you know, like a lot of nice Jewish girls, I've grown up with the idea that work, there are only two things in life that are really important: work and love. You know, it's that Freudian notion, and we can't control too much about love and who our kids love and when they love and if they love, but we can kind of control something about work, at least for some of them, at least for more of them. At least that's what I think. And so I guess I think that that's where I like to. When I talk for this book and when I talk to people like you guys and do great shows like this, that's kind of the message I'd like to get across.
Wonderful.
That get our kids work, meaningful work.
Meaningful work, yeah.
Where do you see Gus 10 years from now?
Well, in my dream world, what he's doing is playing to his strengths, which is being like, you don't live in New York City, but Grand Central, he spends an awful lot of time at Grand Central, knows all the conductors. Now, I don't think that I'm not sure if he has the coordination to actually drive a train. I don't think he does. I think that he could be that guy who they have guys in the information booth who do nothing but give out information to people all day long, and that would be his happy place. He could do it. He would be thrilled. He could do it now, and it's something like that. I mean, I don't know. You know, if that's that seems kind of realistic to me. He could do. I don't even know what it is he could do. Right. I used to joke, because he's such a friendly person who likes to make connection, about being a Walmart greeter or something like that. That would be great for him.
Yes.
You know, this is not about money. This is not about status. This is about being part of something larger than himself.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I want for him.
About finding fulfillment by having a purpose.
Absolutely. Yeah, and what about your other son? Because I hate it when we leave the siblings out, and he is amazing and brilliant and a light unto himself. What do you think he's going to be doing in 10 years?
Well, he tells me one of the reasons he's barely on social media is because he plans to have a career in politics, only not here in this country. He actually, he's going to be a junior in college, and he wants to, at the moment anyway, he's telling me that he wants to go and study in England. Maybe he's seen too many of those videos where they all seem to be having fun in Parliament. I don't know what the story is, but he says he wants to go to university there. So in fact, over Christmas, we're going to go and look at a couple of schools there. He has a British passport because my husband is English, so this makes a little sense. But also, he really just wants to be near his Newcastle, his beloved football team there. And I think he's planning on paying his way through playing poker, because that's what he
All right.
That's what he spends a lot. My whole house this summer, I kept walking into my house, and there were like a bunch of strange kids, sort of looking a little guilty and shifting chips underneath the table. Kind of fun. I don't know what they were playing for.
What is his relationship like with Gus?
Well, I tell people who are in a similar situation, whether it's twins or not, you've got to be really patient with your neurotypical kid and not mind if they're embarrassed or they're sometimes exasperated, because of course at certain points Henry was and sometimes is, but he adores his brother. It's finally occurred to him after years of trying to be in some competition of his own creation. It's occurred to him that his brother doesn't want to compete with him, isn't interested in it, and is just his champion no matter what. His brother always, yay, you come home with the chess trophy, yay, whatever it is. So even though still Henry gets a little exasperated, and he says to me, Mom, you're going to have to give me more than half the death money because I have to take care of him. I love the term death money. I've got to, sort of clue him in that it's, I let him call it that, but I should probably say the word inheritance. But anyway, you've got to do this because Gus is I'm going to have to do this. And I'm like, you might have to do something. Yeah, you might have to do something. I don't shy away from the reality of the fact that he will probably have to look after his brother's interests in some way, not entirely. I think my guess would be that Gus will be mostly independent, except for issues of money, because I can't, he's so trusting, I can't see how it's going to change and that he'll be able to deal with that. But who knows?
Right.
Well, Judith, we have to say it's been such a delight to have you here. We really want to recommend that people get the book, To Siri with Love, and it's available in all the major booksellers. You can get it on Amazon. And you have other books as well. Is there a place where you'd like to send them to, in particular, our viewers?
Nah, not really. I mean, it's just go to SiriWithLove.com or JudithNewman.com if you want to read stuff I've written. But no, just wherever makes you happy. Going to independent bookstores if that makes you happy, and just like sneak in there and turn my book, right side up. You know how you do that in bookstores, and then just flee. That would be good.
Right, I love that. Well, it's a fascinating read. You're a lovely, luscious writer. I really felt like I was in New York City with you and your family, and it's delightful. And so we really want to encourage people.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Now I've got like my afternoon's work cut out for me. It's like Googling and listening to past shows and all of that stuff. I really appreciate it.
We'll take a look at take a look at our interview with Adam Irving from Off the Rails. We thoroughly enjoyed having him here. He was delightful.
Right. Well, thank you, Judith, for being on the show, and To Siri with Love. We encourage everybody to go out and get it.
And Judith, I sent you a friend request on Facebook.
Oh, you did? Oh, well,
already.
Okay.
And I also, I'm going to say this too. I want to introduce you to Joanne Lara from Autism Works Now. I think you'll have a lot in common.
Oh, that would be great.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Judith.
Have
Bye-bye.
a lovely day.